What is up, bros? Josh here, and welcome to Chapter 5, Episode 2 of our Road to Tier 10 series. Our series, we go down every line in World of Warships from the lowest tier all the way to the highest tier to see if we learn anything new or anything surprises us along the way. In the last episode, we went over the low tier German battleships, and now we're finally into the mid tier, both tier 6 and tier 7 of the German battleships. This series has been a ton of fun for me. I've learned a lot of new things, and especially the German battleships mid tiers has really brought a lot of things that I didn't quite know or at least didn't remember about these two specific battleships. At tier 6, we have the Bayern, and this is a ship that I knew was really good. I think this is a ship on the line that a lot of people would consider a keeper and was one I was excited to play again. Now, going through this line at tier 6, I don't really get a full upgraded captain, but I had recently played the Bayern in the ranked sprint season, and it was a lot of fun and extremely strong. On top of just having good guns, a good reload, high AA, great armor, good secondaries if you want to spec it out that way. This ship is kind of that perfect battleship that I really enjoy. I actually found that the Kaiser at 4, Koenig at 5, Bayern at 6 is really this good progression to seeing this beefy battleship before you get into the tier 7 Gneisenau, where it kind of gets a weird identity. But the Bayern was a lot of fun for me, and I think a lot of fun for a lot of people. I was actually surprised to see it took us a little bit longer to get through the Bayern as we look at and we compare the tier 6 stats. The Bayern itself, though, super strong, but tier 6 is where lines, and we're trying to get through these lines as fast as possible, or seeing which lines get through fast as possible. And the other battleships we've gone through is something like the Normandy, which is a tier 6 French battleship, which only took us 19 games, and the Bayern took us 21. And when I was looking at these stats, I was really surprised because I think the Bayern is head and shoulders above being a better ship than the Normandy. However, when I kind of remembered what happened between these two ships, the Normandy is extremely fast, which has a good way to flex back and forth. With the tiers, the mid tiers in this game, games tend to go extremely quick, and then sides of the map tend to fall extremely fast. So Normandy was a lot better at getting from one edge of the map to the other, and that's, I think, why it was a little bit faster there. Also, when I thought back, because it's been actually a while since I went through the Bayern, we got really bad matchmaking, as you see. Still had a 62% win rate, which is fantastic, almost 75,000 damage, and took us 21 games to get through. Really not too bad. Overall, a very fun ship, and I really enjoyed the ship itself. I highly recommend it if you haven't gone through this to at least keep this ship, maybe if you have the ability to have those credits. But then Bayern at tier 6 is fantastic, and I even found, if you played it right, it even up tiers decently once you get the range upgrade and everything like that. The Bayern, though, extremely strong. I think it's really just this perfect mix of a tier 6 battleship. It can compete against all the premiums. It does really well against cruisers, and with a relatively fast reload for what seems like a very aggressive ship, you can also get close into targets. You're going to win most brawls against tier 6 battleships. You have this great German turtleback armor, so you don't really get citadeled. You will take some pretty high alpha damage salvos from other battleships, but the shell of the ship and everything is just this great mix of what you want in these mid-tier ships. Obviously, compared to something like the Normandy, it's going to be a tad slower, but you're just beefier. So imagine the Bayern with the speed of the Normandy. I mean, everyone would love that ship. However, the weak side of the ship is you are in tier 6 matchmaking, so that is going to be trial by fire, and sometimes you will go multiple games with getting bottom tier, but when this thing is top tiered, it is extremely strong and can almost be like a boss fight. A well-played Bayern can really hold down an entire side by itself, and that's something we did a lot in the ranked sprint season, is I would kind of flex to one side and be this battleship. So either the multiple ships would have to come and try to do damage to me, or I would get these broadsides. Both of them the Bayern does very well. It's very good at punishing broadsides. It's very good at tanking a lot of damage. It's a very tanky battleship, and I think that's what makes it so much fun. I highly recommend this ship, and was a blast to go through. This is one, obviously I sell all the ships as I go by, so I am going to shed a single tier when I have to sell the Bayern, because it's such a fun ship. Although with hopefully upcoming more ranked seasons, I may end up rebuying it to play it there. We'll see if they ever get back down to tier 6 for both ranked and ranked sprint. But I do highly recommend, if you haven't gone through the German battleships, definitely play up to this one. Now the line moving to the tier 7 with the Gneisenau changes up a little bit, but the Bayern itself at tier 6 is so much fun, and I really enjoy this ship. Obviously, this is one I had played much more recently, and it's basically everything I remember. Just a good, solid tier 6 battleship. at tier 7, we have the Gneisenau, and then there's always going into these lines. I let you guys pick all the lines, so we are going through the German battleship lines. So once we're finished with that, I will let you guys pick the next line if you are interested, whatever you guys would prefer to see. If you guys want to start putting those down below in the comments, what you would like to see next, that would be really cool. You could look back at all the previous videos to see what we've gone through. We've gone through the Pan-Asian destroyers, the French battleships, the Russian destroyers, as well as the German battleships. We've even started the French cruisers, but spoilers on one of them. But the Gneisenau, when I go into these lines, there's always a ship that I'm interested in how it will do, and the Gneisenau was this. The Gneisenau gets this reputation of being an overall pretty crappy battleship. The main reason is it has 6 shells going out, 3x2, with a relatively high dispersion for only having 6 shells. Now, they are very big shells and they can do a lot of damage, but there's still only 6. So that is the biggest downside. However, this ship is completely different than the rest of them on the line. It still has that tanky German armor, it still has that maneuverability, and it still has great secondaries in AA. However, the guns and having torpedoes makes it this weird, aggressive ship that is kind of by itself. This one is one I remember on my main account having a lot of fun, but this is the kind of thing I like learning in this series. Is the majority of the time I play the Gneisenau in a division. Now when I'm solo queuing, this ship was very hard to actually carry in, which is something that I always like to learn while playing these ships. The Gneisenau was one that I went into expecting to like, and I really didn't like that much. And as we can quick go over here, and it's actually even surprising to see the stats of the Gneisenau compared to the other tier 6 like the Leon, is the Gneisenau was actually very high win rate for me, but as you see, my average damage was 64,000. Now at this point in time, a good comparison would be comparing it to the Leon. Leon took us 30 games, the Gneisenau took us less than that, and as you see, the Leon averaged almost 30,000 more damage. The reason being is I was so aggressive in the Gneisenau that I made plays happen. So we were averaging less damage, but the XP and the ships I was doing targets or doing damage to were stuff like cruisers and destroyers, and then trying to make that Hail Mary hero play on battleships using torps. I was hyper aggressive in this. Probably a tad more aggressive than I needed to be. But I would go back-to-back 40,000 games with 2 kills, and then the next game I'd have 160,000 damage because I ended up getting the torps off. Very aggressive. I was very aggressive. So it's kind of interesting that looking at this, a relatively low damage ship with a higher win rate compared to the Leon, which I remember had pretty comparative matchmaking, and we didn't really get bottom tiered or top tiered that much, because tier 7 overall is something that I've learned on this series as well. Tier 7's matchmaking is fantastic, one of the best in the game in my opinion. So the Gneisenau pushing in, being aggressive, the Leon just taking an extra game to get through with averaging that much more damage. As you see, 64,000 and almost 2,100, and then 90,000, almost 2,200. But the Gneisenau, we just got through so much quicker. And I probably played this a little bit more aggressive than I should have. I maybe could have even gotten through this a little bit faster if I just played a tad slower and a bit more methodical. But when you have the ability to use those torps and to use the guns and to use the secondaries, I mean, come on, you just kind of gotta hit the W button and get in there and fire the guns. Now, the ups and downs of this ship are with the main battery. That is 100%. And so this is going to be a ship that, and there were many times where I would fire the guns and go, well, I guess my shells didn't hit there. And it was almost kind of becoming the joke of this ship. However, we had an extremely high win rate of 76% going through this. I didn't really enjoy this ship. It wasn't quite what I remember, and that's one thing that kind of bummed me out a little bit. I remember this being the ship that's kind of known and as being mediocre, and a lot of people really dislike it. However, for me, I remember it being awesome. I remember it hitting salvos. I remember the dispersion being a tad wonky, but I remember making awesome plays in this. Now, I did make awesome plays with it, but it was a lot more frustrating than I do remember. So that was kind of a bummer to go through, but also something awesome to learn. As a solo ship, there were many games where it just wasn't a solo carrying ship. And the main reason being is you could be aggressive, but you had to make big plays to really have an impact on the game. It's not a ship you could kind of sit at range, let's say like the Ashitaka or the Nelson or the Colorado Nagato, these ships that are just more reliable and sending more shells out on average per salvo. This one didn't quite have that. You would fire multiple shells at a ship, and since it had higher caliber shells, but only 6 of them, you'd maybe get a hit, but it tended to be overpen on a lot of situations. So that was a bit of a downside. This ship though, still awesome. It's fun if you like that aggro playstyle, but there were many situations where I couldn't get things done, and we probably would have a little bit higher win rate than a lot of spots if I maybe just would have played a little slower. But I mean, it's so fast, it's so agile, you can't help but just go forward. The ship, though, out of all the tier 7 battleships outside of the Scharnhorst, the Scharnhorst is basically the same kind of setup, torp-wise. It has 6-kilometer torps and kind of the same, in a way, same secondary, same AA, same. The guns, though, are smaller, so you can, and they shoot faster, but there's more of them. The Gneisenau still is probably one of the top playmakers of tier 7 battleships. And the main reason being is you have a torp set on each side. So pushing in within 6 kilometers, tech tree wise, I think the Gneisenau is probably the scariest battleship. Not only are you going to get citadels on ships, but if you are not moving or pushing in, you're probably going to lose that brawl against the Gneisenau because they have that torpedo threat. So definitely one you want to keep some distance from, but still the inconsistency at range made this not the most fun ship to play for me, especially not what I remembered. Solo queuing, obviously everything, but still overall held some great stats, a great win rate, and surprisingly was faster than a line or than a ship that a lot of people tend to love, the Leon at tier 7. We were just a tad faster, had a higher win rate and everything. So overall, had a great time with this ship, getting through it, but man, it wasn't quite what I remember. And overall was one that is definitely, I can feel a bit more what everyone's talking about going through. And definitely would consider this a sell of a ship. I got to buy some upcoming ships with the credit, so I'll be okay to sell this. But overall, this is exactly what I'm looking for in this series, eye-openers, and this is what I love to learn about this series. So the mid-tier German, tier 6 Bayern and tier 7 Gneisenau. The Bayern is exactly what I remember, lots of fun, and something that I really enjoy, and I hope you guys do as well. That's definitely a ship I would keep. The Gneisenau, however, I did kind of get the feel that everyone else did going through it. It's not quite what I remember, but it was something that was a great eye-opener and still fun to play. We did lose a little bit of motivation while going through this ship because we started working on some other stuff on this account, but we ended up getting through in relatively fast. I mean, compared to a good battleship, we got through it quicker. Still that 7. So the next episode will be the high tiers, and then we'll be finishing up the German battleship line. So let me know in the comments below what line you would like to see next. Again, we've gone over the Pan-Asian line, Pan-Asian DDs, the French battleships, the Japanese cruisers, and then the Russian destroyers, the Grozovoy line. We'll be done with the German battleships, and then we're working on the French cruisers right now as well. But after that, it's up to you on what you guys would want to see. It'd be cool to do another destroyer line, maybe one of the IGN or German. Those are two of the lines that I tend to hate, so that's why a lot of Twitch chat is wanting me to go down and do those lines, because those are two of my least favorite lines in this entire game. But maybe I'll learn something when playing through them and get a new love for them. I'm unsure. But the German battleships, however, so far have been fun. But we are getting into that awkward 7, 8, 9 range. Obviously the GK, I think the GK is one of the most fun battleships at tier 10, but we're going to go through ships like the Bismarck, the Freddy at tier 9, and now we finished the Gneisenau. So the next episode will be the high tiers, and then we will finish up the German battleships. But anyways, let me know in the comments below what you guys think of the mid-tier German battleships, both the Bayern as well as the Gneisenau, and your thoughts on the ships. Are they keepers? Are they ones that you hated playing? Or are they ships that you think are middle of the pack and kind of fine where they are? But anyways, guys, that's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.